I now invite Mr. Deepak Jain, who is the President ACMA and also the CMD of Lumax Industries Limited, to please share his thought. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. Eminent panelists, distinguished speakers, leaders and my peers from the auto industry, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and at the outset, let me also wish all of you good health and well-being. I thank CII for organizing this value chain summit with a very relevant theme, resilience to resurgence. But as we struggle to put our supply chains in order, we need to also urgently recalibrate. I'm extremely glad that Mr. Sunil Kakkar is chairing this conference. In fact, you couldn't have had a better chairperson. Kakkar-san is also the chairperson of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Siam Sourcing Group and is leading the entire automotive industry from the front in ensuring business continuity in the automotive supply chains across the country. He's also led the ACMA Siam EY joint study on localization, which I will also talk about more in my address. ACMA is very grateful to CII for treating it as an equal partner and for the tremendous support they have extended to the automotive sector, especially in taking up our issues with the center or the state government. Thank you, Abhimanyu, Mr. Gandhi, and Mr. Rallan for your continuous engagement and support with ACMA. As all of you know, these are extremely unpredictable and unprecedented times. The second wave of the pandemic has been much more lethal than the previous one. The local lockdowns have had a disruptive impact on the entire supply chain, but with the progress of vaccinations and the decline in the positivity rate of the virus, there is some emergence of optimism. We understand from our customers, the OEMs, that the demand in the auto sector remains extremely volatile, and there is a possibility of demand suppression during this COVID 2.0 due to the rural spread, younger demographic impact, and regional lockdowns all over the country where 70 to 80% of the dealerships are closed. However, if we learn from the recent COVID 1.0 experience, we remain hopeful that in the coming weeks, as the lockdowns will be gradually lifted, consumer footfalls and confidence will return to the showrooms, and hopefully in the near future, things should normalize. The production in the component sector is in tandem with the increase in the vehicle sales, as it is also expected to pick up. However, we remain cautiously optimistic that FY22 will be marginally better than FY21. However, we as a nation and people will need to take all necessary precautions to ensure that the third wave of the pandemic is not as devastating as the second wave, and we are better prepared. As an industry, it is imperative for us to focus on being a globally competitive automotive value chain on one hand, and on the other hand, to create a robust, safe, and non-disruptive supply chain. This was clearly also the focus point of Kakkar-san's address. Let me share some of my thoughts and perception on this. The automotive component industry in India is a testimony to India's spirit of entrepreneurship. This sector accounts for over 2.3% of India's GDP and creates employment for over 5 million. Also, 80% of its members are MSMEs, making it a key driver of the Indian economy. The industry registered a growth of over 49 billion in FY20, and exports stood at 14.5 billion, while imports touched 15.5 billion US dollars. North America and EU together account for over 60% of the auto component industry's exports. Whilst the localization in the vehicle industry at tier 1 level is around 70%, the entire automotive industry, according to the recent ACMA Siam EY joint study, imported auto components worth rupees 1.84 lakh crores in FY 2020. The component industry hence becomes a net importer and therefore is a matter of concern for all of us. Siam and ACMA are working in close cooperation with each other and have set a target of localizing at least 15 to 20% of component imports in the next 5 years. Localization will not only de-risk our supply chains and minimize disruptions, but will also make the products made in India globally price competitive, thus adding to our export worthiness. We believe that through this enhanced thrust on localization, automotive component exports can double from the current US 15 billion to 30 billion US in the next 5 years. Currently, in the global automotive value chain, the components have less than 1.5% share, and this needs to have a strategic look how to enhance this. Whilst the industry is cautiously optimistic about the immediate future prospects, headwinds such as high commodity prices, shortages of semiconductors, and shortages of containers increasing the freight costs among could also impede our growth story. However, the good point is that the long-term growth story and prospects of the Indian automotive sector remains bright. Today, most global OEMs are present in India, and with the support of the OEMs, the industry value chain have had significant improvements by adopting world-class best practices. The component industry now needs to focus our attention on creating greater value addition by focusing on indigenized products and relevant technologies to the market. The Indian auto component industry also need to be ready to face technological disruptions as autonomous, connected, electric, and shared mobility gain ground in India, albeit at varied spaces. I would urge the government to support our industry, and we would embark on a journey that can truly make us a global supply chain with a competitive and sustainable quality supply chain. I have the following requests to make. First, creating an export thrust by early announcement of the road tap scheme and expediting the implementation of the PLI for the auto sector, which is expected to boost both manufacturing and investments into the country. This apart, we need to also facilitate and encourage the manufacturing of auto electronics and components for EVs. And this could be done either by modifying the existing FAME scheme or announcing a special PLI for it. It is also important that the industry and the government puts in place a mutually agreed technology roadmap for the industry. You would agree that ad hoc introduction of technologies without sufficient time for localization only adds to the import of components. And last but not the least, the health of our employees is paramount, and therefore we request the government to ensure vaccines are available in sufficient quantities so that we can carry out industry-wide vaccinations in all the automotive hubs. I also urge the OEMs to involve the supply chains when they roll out the vaccination programs for their own employees. Since the government representatives are not with us today on this forum, I request CII to amplify and voice a request to the government. In conclusion, I'm indeed very hopeful that with collaborated and concerted efforts by all stakeholders, we will not only be able to overcome the current challenges, but will also become a globally competitive, robust, and safe supply chain in not too distant future. We stand committed in a fight against this pandemic and to balance lives and livelihoods, keeping health and safety of all our citizens as our main priority. Thank you once again for giving ACMA this opportunity, and I wish the event a great success. Thank you.